We are working on GMetrix Excel Expert Skills Review 1. Task 1 wants us to go ahead and map this table here. So put your cursor in this table. And what you want to do is on the Developer tab. If you do not have the Developer tab, you just need to right click here in these tabs, click Customize Ribbon, and check the Developer box and click OK to see this. But with our cursor in this table, we want to go to the Developer tab here at the top and click Map Properties. This is going to allow us to change the things like the name. So we'll go ahead and type that in. And adjust column width. And then select overwrite existing data when refreshing or importing data. And we're going to go ahead and click OK here. After we've done that, we now need to go ahead and export this file. We're still in the Developer tab, and we want to be in the XML group. What we want to do is just click Export here, and then map to our GMetrix template folder. And then we'll type the name below. Click Export. Task 2 wants us to create a custom document property. So we'll go to the File tab here at the top. And in the Info section, what we want to do is click this Properties drop-down and click Advanced Properties. And then from here, what we want to do is go ahead and click Custom. We'll go ahead and type the name completed. And then in the type, what we want to do is select yes or no. And our default value is going to be no. We'll go ahead and click OK. And then click OK. Click Add and then click OK. We'll leave the Backstage view. Task 3 wants us to go ahead and protect this worksheet by locking the cells. So what we want to do is click this space between A and 1 so that it selects all the cells in this document. And then what we want to do is we want to be in the Home tab here, and we're in the Font Group dialog box, Protection. And what we want to do is check this box that says Locked. We'll click OK. Now what we want to do is scroll down and select the range E66 to G4. We're going to do the same thing. Home, Font Group dialog box, Protection, and we're actually just going to uncheck Locked here. We'll click OK. Now in the Review tab we're going to go, and in the Changes group we're going to select Allow Users to Edit Ranges. And then we're going to click Protect Sheet. Then what we want to do is uncheck Selected Lock Cells and click OK. Task 4 wants us to encrypt this workbook, so what we want to do is click File here at the top, Protect Workbook, Encrypt with Password, and we're going to type the password below. And then what we want to do is click Protect Workbook again so that we can mark it as final. We'll click OK. OK. Task 5 wants us to share the workbook so that the change history is saved for 90 days and then it's updated automatically every 10 minutes. What we want to do is go to the Review tab here at the top. In the Changes group, we're going to go ahead and click Share Workbook. We'll click Advanced. We'll change this 30 here to 90. And then in the Update Changes, we're going to change that. We'll select that radial button and then change that from 15 to 10. And we'll click OK. Task 6 wants us to go ahead and display all the changes that have ever been made by anyone in this document. So what we want to do is go to the Review tab here at the top. We're in the Changes group. We'll click the Track Changes drop-down and click Highlight Changes here. What you want to do is actually uncheck When, and notice it changes it to All. And we want to uncheck the Highlight, Don't Highlight, and it wants us to list this on a new sheet. So we'll click that box. So we uncheck this one and we check this one. We'll click OK. Task 7 wants us to configure Excel to enable background checking and display the detected formula errors in red. So what we want to do is go to the File tab here at the top, and Configure usually means Options. And then what we want to do is click Formulas here. In the Error Checking group, we want to check this box, Enable Background Error Checking, and then we want to change this from green to red. If you're not sure, hover and click OK. Task 8 wants us to set up a few watches on the Family Budget worksheet. So what we want to do is go to the Formulas tab here at the top, and in the Formula Auditing, we want to click Watch Window. And then what we want to do is put our cursor here in the total for the housing, the difference right here, and click this button right here, Add Watch. We'll click Add. The next thing we want to do is, in addition to housing, we want to do it for the other tables, transportation, loans, and entertainment. Task 9 wants us to show all the formulas in this worksheet. So we want to go to the Formulas tab here at the top, and then in the Formula Auditing group, we just want to click Show Formulas. Task 10 wants us to enable the iteration calculation formula options. So in order to do this, we want to go to the File tab here at the top. We're going to click Options, Formulas. In the calculation options, we're going to check this box right here. And then what we want to do is make these changes from 125 and then to 0.005. We'll go ahead and click OK. Task 11 wants us to go ahead and put a COUNTIFs formula in F6 on the employee records worksheet. So we'll go to that tab, and then we'll go to F6, and then we'll go ahead and insert our function. Type in COUNTIFs, click Go. Make sure you select the one with the S at the end. The first thing that we need to do is look for the criteria employee. So what we want to do is put our cursor here. We're in this, our cursor's here in the criteria range 1, and what you want to do is just select this range, B7 to B39, and what you want to tell Excel to look for is employee. That's the first criteria. The second range is going to be our offices here. So we'll go from D7 to D39, and our second criteria is Utah. We'll go ahead and click OK. And came back with a result of 4. Task 12 wants us to go ahead and use the average ifs function in G7, so we'll go ahead and put our cursor there in G7. And what we want to do is click Insert Function. We'll type in average ifs. Make sure you select the one with the S here. And our average range is actually going to be the unit price, so we'll go ahead and select that range. And then it's going to ask for our criteria. The first criteria is item SKUs that are greater than, so we'll select the item SKU range, and then our greater than 30,000. And then what we want to do is we're looking for quantities that do not include 0 as well. That's our second criteria. So our criteria range 2 is just going to be C5 to C24. And then in the criteria, we're going to do the these two brackets here, the greater than and less than, like that, and then click 0. And then we're going to go ahead and click OK. Task 13 wants us to insert the SUMIFS function in F7. So we're going to go ahead and put our cursor here in F7. We're going to click Insert Function over here. We'll type in SUMIFS. Make sure you select the function with the S at the end for SUMIFS. And then our sum range is going to be the quantity total here. So we'll put our cursor here in C5 and select all the way to C24. And then our first criteria is we're looking for SKU numbers in the 10,000 range. So we'll select B5 and select all the way down to B24. And our first criteria is going to be greater than 10,000. And then what we're going to do is select that same SKU range, B5 to B24, and this time we're going to do less than 20,000. And that'll give us that range of the 10,000s. We'll click OK. Task 14 wants us to go to the Employee Records tab, and in F7, it wants us to go ahead and insert the COUNTIF function. So with that cell selected, we'll click the Insert Function. We'll type in COUNTIF. We'll click OK. And our range is going to be D7 to D39. And our criteria is going to be main. We'll click OK. Task 15 wants us to create a brand new worksheet. And what we're going to use is the Consolidate feature in Excel off of the Office Records worksheet. So let's go ahead and click this plus button here. And then we'll double click this sheet 1 and type in Office Expenses. Make sure you capitalize the E. We'll hit enter to set our text in that tab. And then in A1, we're actually going to go ahead and type in expenses as well. We'll click enter to put our cursor in A2. From here, what we want to do is go to the data tab here at the top, and in the data tools, we're going to go ahead and click consolidate. Make sure up here at the top, the function is sum. And then what we'll do is we have our cursor here in reference, and what we want to do is go to the Office Records, and notice it's already populating information. Our range, our first range is going to be A10 to B23 down here. Once you've selected that range, we'll click Add. What you want to do is then go ahead and select the rest of the ranges here. When you're done adding all of that, you want to make sure that you use labels, left column here checked, and then we'll click OK. Those hashtag symbols just mean there's not enough room in here, so we'll move that out so you can see the numbers. Task 16 wants us to go to S12, and what it wants us to use is the Evaluate Formula tool to figure out what's wrong with this function. So we're going to go to the Formula tab here at the top. In the Formula Auditing, we want to click Evaluate Formula. And what it wants us to do is just click Evaluate twice so we can see that these numbers are subtracting, and then you can see here that these numbers are subtracting. But really what it wants us to do is there's an error, and what it is, if you look, there's a huge difference between these two sets of numbers. And what it is it's subtracting these numbers here instead of adding them. That's basically using the Evaluate tool. You should be able to figure out, which can be difficult. You didn't create this table, so looking at one odd end set of numbers can be hard to find. But ultimately, what the Evaluate wants you to see is in this step is that we need to add these numbers together. Task 17 wants us to use the VLOOKUP function on the Employee Records tab. So we'll go to the Employee Records tab. We'll put our cursor in F7, and then we'll go ahead and begin our VLOOKUP. Click OK. Our lookup value is going to be Craig Stronin. Our table array is going to be a 6 to D39. And then we're looking for the ID, which is the C column here. So that's 1, 2, 3. We'll go ahead and select 3. And we'll click OK. Task 18 wants us to go to the status chart tab here, and then it wants us to change the layout of this chart. So what we want to do is, with that selected, we now can go to the Design tab here at the top. We'll click Quick Layout and select 1. And then it wants us to change the chart styles to Style 9 here. So we'll go ahead and click this More to select 9. If you're not sure, hover. It also wants us to change the employment history, so we'll change the chart title to that. We'll click out of that text box. And then what it wants us to do is to save this as a chart template in our GMetrix templates folder. And there are a few ways to do this. I'm just going to go ahead and right-click here and click Save as Template. And then I'll map to my GMetrix templates folder. Type in the name. Task 19 wants us to add a logarithmic trend line to our financial data chart here. So in order to do that, there are a few ways to do this, but with that selected, we'll click this plus here to get the trend line. And we'll click this arrow to get more options. 2005 is our base for this, so we'll click OK. We'll select logarithmic. And then we want to go forward, so we'll go ahead and type in 1.5 here. And then we can close out of that. Notice it went ahead and extended that out. And then it wants us to do another one, an exponential trend line onto the other chart. So we'll click that. We'll click the plus, trend line arrow. Scroll down so we can see more. We can actually just click this here instead of going through all that again. We'll click OK. Task 20 wants us to go ahead and modify the data validation input message here that just says offices. So if you click here on the title here in A4 to G4, you'll get this here. What you want to do is click data at the top, and in the data tools we want to click the data validation drop down to select data validation, and then we want to select the input message here, and in the input message we want to change that to the text below. When you're done, click OK, and notice the change. Task 21 wants us to create two scenarios called wants and wishes, and it wants us to do that by changing this value here, the future income. So what we want to do is go to the data tab here at the top, and in the forecast group we're going to click the what if analysis and click scenario manager, and we're going to click add. And the first one is wants, and it's by changing G22. It's already populated with that because I selected that cell, but that's that right there. We'll click OK. And then the first scenario is 10,000. We'll click OK. And then we want to create a second one called wishes. We'll click OK. And we're going to change that to 15,000. We'll click OK. And then what it wants us to do is to select wants and then click show, and notice it says 10,000 here. Make sure you select wants before you click that. We'll click close. Task 22 wants us to create a new worksheet, and then what we're going to use is the consolidate feature to consolidate this data here. So we'll click the plus button here, and it wants us to change this worksheet to cut cost. We'll hit enter to set our text, and then we'll go on the data tab here at the top, and the data tools, we'll click consolidate sum function here, and then our cursor's in the reference, so we'll go ahead and go to the family budget tab, and then we'll begin selecting our range here. Click add. Once you're done adding those ranges, you want to select top row and left column before you click OK. Task 23 wants us to go ahead and create a pivot table based upon the information found here in this table on the employee record. So go ahead and select the entire table. What we'll do is click insert here at the top, click pivot table. Right here it's just going to verify the range we've already selected. We'll click OK. We'll go ahead and double click the sheet name because we need to change this to pivot table. We'll click enter to set that text. And then down here it tells us what it really wants us to do. So the office column is going to be our filter. So we'll put I just clicked and dragged to put that there. And then our status is going to be our column label. So again, I'm just clicking and dragging down. And then ID and first name are going to be our rows. So we'll do ID first because it's what's listed first, and it wants last name underneath ID. So notice that green line underneath. When I let go, it fills in that information here. Task 24 wants us to go ahead and create a pivot chart based upon the table found on the employee records worksheet. So we'll go ahead and select our range. We'll click insert here at the top, and in the charts group we'll click pivot chart, drop down to select pivot chart. It's going to verify the range we just selected. We'll click OK. And then the first thing it wants us to do is, it tells us do not show the first and last name in the field report. But what it wants us to do is make the status section our legend. So we're just clicking and dragging down. Our office is going to be its access. And then the ID field is going to go on values. Now, if it does not say sum of ID here, you need to go ahead and click this to change that if it does not say that. And then we'll click next. Task 25 wants us to go ahead and modify this pivot table. So we'll put our cursor here to get the pivot table fields here. It tells us it does not want to see office in anything that we have. So we'll go ahead and uncheck that box, or you could have clicked and dragged it off. And then what it wants us to do is to make the status the first row, first and last name here, and then it wants the ID underneath that. Task 26 wants us to insert a slicer on our employee records table worksheet. So we'll click that tab here at the bottom. We'll go ahead and put our cursor here. And then what we want to do is go to the Analyze tab here at the top. We're going to, in the filter group, click Insert Slicer. It tells us that we want to insert it for Office, so we'll check the Office box and click OK. And then it wants us to change this name here to read Office as shown. And so over here with that selected, Slicer Tools options, we'll change this to change that to Office is shown. We'll click enter to set that text. Notice it went ahead and changed that for us. Now what it wants us to do is to only show Arizona. And I'm going to hold, once I select Arizona, I'm going to hold the control key down and select Utah, and still with it selected, I'm going to select Washington. That way it allows me to select those different names. We'll click next. Task 27 wants us to go ahead and create a macro. So what we want to do is go to the View tab here at the top. In the Macros group, we're going to click the Macros drop down, and select Record Macro. Our macro name is going to be called height, capital H. It doesn't tell us to change anything here, so we'll leave the defaults. We'll click OK. And unlike Word, it's not showing a change in my cursor, but we know it's recording because I have this stop button down here at the bottom. So right now, Excel is recording everything we're going to do here. And we're going to go ahead and click the Home tab here at the top. And in the Cells group, we're going to go ahead and click the Format drop-down for row height. We'll change that to 30. Click OK. And then it wants us to change our font type as well. So we'll put our cursor here in the size and type in 12 and click OK. And now what it wants us to do is select the range of A3 to G9. It wants us to run that macro. So with that range selected, we'll click the View tab here at the top. We'll go to our macros group and click View Macros, and we're going to go ahead and select Run. Task 28 wants us to go ahead and record a macro. So we're going to go to the View tab here at the top, Macros group, Macros drop down, and select Record Macro. The name of this is going to be called Formatting. And now what we want to do is go to the Home tab. And the first thing it wants us to record is to change the formatting from general to currency. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then what it wants us to do is to add a conditional formatting. So we'll select conditional formatting, and what it is it's a blue gradient data bar. So we're going to select data bar, gradient fill, blue data bar. And it's still recording our macro, so we want to make sure we stop that before we do anything else. We'll click View here at the top. Macros group, we'll click the Macros drop down and select Stop Recording. And then it tells us to apply this macro to the financial data. So this is our financial data. And we'll select the numbers here in this range because that's where it wants us to apply the formatting. And on the View tab, Macros group, we'll select View Macros, and then we're going to select Run for our formatting. Task 29 wants us to go ahead and create a button form control. We want to be on the Developer tab. If you do not have that, right-click here in the tabs, click Customize the ribbon. Make sure you check this box next to Developer and click OK. And then once on the Developer tab, we're in the Controls group. We'll click the Insert drop-down. And what we want is the button form control. If you're not sure, hover. And it tells us we can apply this button to any cell. So I'm just going to draw that form. And then we're going to set data bars. This is what it tells us to. We'll click OK. It wants us to go ahead and change the name here from button 1 to set data bars. And then what we want to do is click out of the button to set that text. And then it tells us to go ahead and run it. So we'll go ahead and run it and notice the change. Task 30 wants us to go ahead and edit this spin button here to have some formatting. So what we're going to do is actually just right click that, click Format Control. On the Control tab, we're going to change the minimum to 1, the maximum to 100, and we're going to change the incremental to 1, and we'll click OK.